So the first speaker would be Mrs. Deepa Gaure. She is an educator and inclusive education researcher, and she's a reading consultant for special needs and a mother of a 10-year-old girl child. Deepa has worked in education sector for about a decade and has left her job to pursue her interest in the disability advocacy, inclusion research, and sharing the experiences on her own website. She is actively involved in parents' movement and advocacy. I request Dr. Deepa Gaure to give her talk program.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm really excited and honored to be here today. The keynote speeches were extraordinary. And if you find me a little emotional through my speech, it's mostly because of the people that spoke in the morning, nothing to do with me. Every time my phone used to ring, and I used to see my daughter's school number flashing on the screen, I would almost have a heart attack. Things are getting better now, and every time there is a call from school now, it's only a nervous breakdown. I'm sure many of you whose children go to school would share the feeling with me. But every heartbeat I miss with these calls, I get many more back with pride when I see her giggling with her classmates in the corridor, in the classroom, or enjoying school sports day, or a theater play. And I get pumped up to fight with the system all over again, because I know inclusion isn't easy, but it's surely worth it. Since the day our children are diagnosed and we come to terms with it, we dream of providing them with the best of the opportunities. We take them to countless therapies, give them supplements, work day and night to make them included in society. And when the school gives us a difficult time, we feel cheated, deceived. We expect them to know better, they're professionals, to treat us better. Let me give you an advice. Whenever that happens, don't get hurt. Take a step back and try to see objectively, from a distance, and you'd find not only the reasons, but also the solutions to have more effective communication with the schools. It is imperative that we understand the school structure a little. As most of you already know, the schools are a result of the industrialization process. A school works on mass production of a prototype. The instructions are majorly created for people with an average IQ. And there are little or no resources, training, or information on diversity. Though some schools are trying to change this, but largely we are still struggling with intent than the lack of resources. Another important thing to remember as parents is that disability rights or inclusive education is a relatively new concept for our socio-political systems and for the world at large. Everyone is still trying to interpret and create various models to get it right. Come to think of it, there are 21 types of disabilities, along with a spectrum within each one. And schools have no clue about these. It's natural for them to feel anxious and to not take up the challenge. Right to education has helped us to get in the schools, but the school remains skeptical about our children being able to manage in the classroom. So what can we do as parents to help facilitate that? I would say train them. It's called school readiness. Start training your child for the schools as soon as you can. Train them on following instructions, increasing their attention span, retention, toilet training. Teach them basic shapes, colors, work on speech, fine motor skills, gross motor skills. These are few of them, and sending them to a play school could be a great way to train them on enhancing the skill sets. It would help school in better inclusion so that they don't have to start from the scratch. However, there are children who would learn at their own pace. I would suggest to not push too much, but still keep trying. To look at the whole thing in perspective, we also need to be aware of our rights as parents of children with Down syndrome. RPWD Act, that's Right of Persons with Disability Act 2016, Section 15, 16, 17, and 18 extensively talk about inclusion and education. If I have to put it in simple words, inclusive education can be understood as a fundamental human right of all persons with disabilities, and how enforcing it is a job of the government. It is a process that facilitates a continuing and proactive commitment to the elimination of barriers impeding the right to education, and practice of mainstream schools to accommodate all students. There are many more points which you can read online, and as parents, you all must. Now, the challenge that we as parents face is that most of us are not sending our children to government schools, where this act can be followed through and the authorities can be held responsible. The challenge is we are sending our children to a kind of private autonomous bodies, where the government can only suggest but not enforce. Though there are provisions to report schools to the government, and I'm happy that many states are bringing schools to the task, but how many schools' licenses have been cancelled for not admitting a child with special needs? None. So we still have a long way to go. Another thing to read and have a copy of is CBSE and its provisions that help our children in different classes. The provisions like scribe and compensatory time, exemptions from the third language, flexibility in choosing subjects, and modified alternate question paper. And as our children's advocates and parents, we must be aware of all of these to demand from the schools. Coming back to the educational institutions, most schools in India interpret inclusion on their understanding that is generally based on the beliefs, prejudices, and perceptions. Beliefs like our children are disruptors or invaders, and without them, everything will be fine. And if the child is not doing the same task that everybody in the class is doing, he's not learning. In most schools, children with special needs are sent out in resource rooms at the time of academic classes and are only with the age group peers at the time of co-curricular activities like assembly or computer time or music. But they proudly call them inclusive schools. I want to ask you, are they inclusive? Are these schools inclusive? Of course not. Then there are other interpretations where the child is sitting in the class doing his own thing while the whole class is involved in a separate task. Is that inclusion? Of course not. There is another model where there is a shadow teacher or a personal aide, that's quite in a fad these days, who sits with the child in the corner of the class and helps him with a curriculum. Of course, a reduced curriculum. None of these are foolproof models of inclusion. And in most cases, the child's school will fall somewhere within these categories. But we need to be sure of what we need from the school and what is our ultimate objective of sending our child to the school. In most of the cases, parents think only about social inclusion and peer interaction as the primary objective and don't pay any attention to the academics, which then result in the child feeling left out beyond nursery and kindergarten. So it's also important for the parents to invest in literacy and numerical skills, along with everything else. That will give the child confidence, self-respect, and a sense of belonging to the class at large. She would also be meaningfully engaged if he is doing the same topics that everybody in the class is doing. But how can we do the same topic? There is clearly a cognitive deficit. We all will come to that later. Now let's talk about what do you need to do to help school and his teachers be comfortable with him and also know more about the child. The first thing would be information. The truth is, not many people in the school may have heard or know about the disability your child may have. So making an informative package, like a physical package, something along the lines of all about me, can be sent to the school and distributed to all his teachers. This package should carry information about the child, his disability, his medical history, his strengths, his challenge areas, important things to know about him, and some practical solution or strategies in case there is a behavioral challenge. This package can be extremely handy for all the teachers and will empower them to include your child better. Additionally, a one-page visual guide can be put up on bulletin board, introducing the child that can be read by other support members in the school and other teachers. Sorry, just a second.
Deepa, you have 5 minutes more.
Training and sensitization. Training and sensitizing the staff and the classmates. I've been doing it for the last 3 years, and it has been doing very well for my daughter. If the school allows, plan a presentation for the staff, where along with all the above mentioned information, you can also share some videos, and where the teachers can directly ask you questions and their apprehensions. If you don't get permission for a presentation, the package can still be sent. Similarly, a small interaction should be kept for the classmates, where stories around diversity can be told, or a little discussion based on disability can happen, depending on the age and grade of the child. Training the shadow teacher or the aide. It's extremely important. If the school allows or requires you to have a shadow teacher or a special ed teacher with the child, do train her to keep a distance from the child whenever needed. She should not just become an instruction machine. She should be trained to understand the situations where she should just let the child be. Also, building a relationship with the school. We need to remember, the schools are not obliging us by taking our children in their school. But it's also worth noting that they have thousands of other children too. We don't live in a utopian world, not yet. So keeping things in perspective can be a great way to avoid being too impulsive at certain times. Asking the right questions without pointing fingers and showing that you are there as a resource and not as a critic is vital. The relationship between you and your child's school is going to be crucial and demanding, like other relationships where we are emotionally invested. There will be ups and downs, anger, disappointments, and loads of tears. But one will have to learn to choose their battles. Schools are scared of parents that know their rights. Another very important thing is, schooling is just a part of inclusive education, and one has to ensure that the child is included in all other activities as well. It could be theater, festival, music, annual day celebrations, carnivals, picnic, excursions, etc. It should be non-negotiables. Because by interacting with peers of similar age in an informal setting, our children can learn socially appropriate behaviors. Coming back to following the same syllabus by our children, we all need to know the term minimum learning outcome. Whatever we learned or read in our school years, a large part of it, or I can safely say that the most part of it, is not with us. We don't use trigonometry, Pythagoras' theorem, atoms, or physics experiments every day. And now remember only a part of whatever was taught to us. Similarly, for our children, we need to make a list of learning outcomes which will help them learn whatever is going to be important for them, and all irrelevant information can be left out. Defining major 3-4 objectives every lesson can be extremely helpful for both parents and the school. Let me give you an example of milk. A child of 3rd grade, he doesn't need to know the types of cows and in which part of India are they found and how one kind of cow is different from the other one. The important information that they need to know is where does milk come from, who gives us milk, where does it get packaged, and what are different kinds of milk. That's more relevant and important from a life skill point of view. So for every concept or lesson that's going to be taught in the school, you can define objectives, and then it becomes extremely easy to follow through. Alternate methods of knowing if the child has understood should also be shared with the teachers because they are not trained in it. So if the child can't write a descriptive answer, he can answer in multiple choice. Yes or no. Can he draw or answer orally? Medium is not important, content is. Also, for every lesson, you have to think multisensory, or how to manage all the senses at least 3, visual, audio, and tactile. So if I'm teaching about animals, I would like to show them a video of the animals, make them listen to the sounds of the animals, show them pictures, toys, and also take them to the zoo. If we think of every topic that we are going to teach in multisensory way, we are doing a good service or a great service to our children and to the school. So as parents, think multisensory for every topic and come up with resources or ideas. They will be able to help your child better included in the classroom. Here are a few examples that I have done for my daughter. So before that, I would quickly tell you, these are 9 types of curriculum adaptations. I'll take just a few. So quantity of the task that is given to the child can be adapted. The time, again, can be changed based on what kind of disability the child has, level of support, whether he needs one-to-one, then the kind of inputs. Do we need a different input than just a plain lecture method? Level of difficulty, what do we expect as output from the child? Can he just draw and show us? What kind of participation? If it's a social science class and the child is still not at that level, can he hold the globe for the whole class? Alternate goals and substitute curriculum. You may find it online. And these are some of the modifications. I would like you to read. So this is one of the worksheet that we got in grade 2. And it's very confusing. What did I want my daughter to know about libraries? This. We keep books in the library. We should be quiet in the library. At a grade 2 level, if she knows these 2 things, I think those were my objectives. And if they can be met by modifying the worksheet, it serves my purpose well. Another one, and this is very interesting and you should read it, or I'll just read it out. One day, Lola was sitting alone in her bedroom and enjoying reading her favorite storybook. She was engrossed, when suddenly from the corner of her eye, she spotted something. It was a huge black spider. What do you think will happen next? Write your interesting and descriptive story in the space provided below. Write in a way that makes the person who reads it say, wow, a marvelous story. Now, if you're expecting this somebody who has Down syndrome, who has little or no speech, and is in grade 2 of a mainstream school, we are expecting too much. So this is what we did. One day, Lola was sitting alone in her bedroom, enjoying reading her book. Suddenly, she saw a spider, a huge black spider. What do you think Lola will do? So I've given her choices. Will she run out of the room or call her mama for help? Or will she be brave and kill the spider? Please draw a picture of Lola. Do you think it serves the purpose? Do you think it serves the purpose? Okay. Another one. So they had to know about bats. Long text. We did this. I wanted her to know that bat is not a bird, that they fly at night, and what do they eat? 3 objectives out of the whole chapter of bats. Can we accomplish it by making the text simpler for her to understand? Highlighting is done for her to make question answers easier. So this is one of the comprehension sheets that we had made for bats. Can you see it? So what is a bat? 2 choices, bird or mammal. And because we've been doing mammal, she knows it's a mammal. Sometimes you need to give them ridiculously easy choices so that they can pick the right one. So if I want to ask a first grader child with DS, where do birds live? I would not say in the tree or in the nest. That's confusing. I would ask in the water or in the tree. That's easy for them to pick up, right? So you need to learn, you need to design the curriculum thinking from their point of view. What would you want to choose and you want to make them confident, right, at the end of it. Okay, this is another one. Just a quick, I'll go. We were to teach about mammals. I just want to show, because our children are visual learners. This is how you can make some chapters simple. mammals give birth to babies? Visual. Visual. Can you see? These are some of the ideas that you can implement in your curriculum, or you can share with the school. So every concept or topic that is going to be taught, you can create such presentations for the school and give it to the teachers, and they're going to be thankful. Apart from that, you can make something like this. So we had to learn about milk. Just a quick 1 minute book. This was a hard copy.
How many minutes are you? More? No, it's already gone. 5 minutes.
Oh, okay. I'll just finish it in the next 2 minutes. Okay. Okay. Also, I want to show you this video. It's a little important. So, how do I?
Arsha is invisible today. She's not here. So I'm going to do it all alone.
We had to learn the steps in sequence on how to sow a seed, how the plant works. So we made a poem out of it.
Dig the soil.
First we dig the soil.
Then we put the seeds.
Put.
Then we level the field.
Level.
And then we water the plant every day.
So we had to learn the sequence in the whole sequence. It was important, the teacher said, so we made a poem. First we dig the soil, dig. Then we put the seed, put. Then we level the field, level. And then we water the plant every day. So it can be quite simple, auditory, visual, however you want to play it. Okay, we're done with that. I'm sorry, I'm just going to finish in the next 1 minute. Okay, so the important thing to remember is that consistency is the key, and that today your child may be 5, but very soon he'll be 15. So not to lose the bigger picture is also important. Summing it all up, I'd like to say that inclusion isn't just a milestone. It's a philosophy with life-changing implications. It will exhaust you, and you may question your decision to put your child in a mainstream school. But I would still reiterate the fact: inclusion isn't easy, but it's surely worth it. Thank you so much.
So Deepa, it was a wonderful presentation on inclusive education, and by your presentation we learned that it's a difficult task but not impossible. So any questions from the audience? I can give you 2 minutes. None? So I think we'll proceed with the second. Deepa, there's a question for you.
Good morning. Thank you so much for the presentation. I just wanted to ask you, like you were telling us about how school is scared of parents who know their rights. So I just wanted to ask you, how did you bring the school into the fray? Because like my brother, when we go to his school, like recently we went to his school, he's actually now going to turn 18. So that's an even bigger problem, because schools are saying that he's going to become an adult. So how can we keep him into the same school? He's going to turn 18, but he's going to be in class 7. He's still in class 7 now. So there are some schools who just include our children, like children with Down syndrome, but they don't have any provisions. I think, and the choice is between schools who don't even include children with Down syndrome into the fray, and schools who just include our children into the fray without actually paying attention to the kids. It's just in the name, just namesake. So could you tell us some actual legal work that we could do so that we could actually request schools? Because I don't know about Delhi, but we're living in Lucknow. So there aren't any schools that are actually working on this. So could you tell us some legal...
See,
works
legalities, as I've told you, I mean, thank you for the question. The legalities I've told you, you can go through the RPWD Act 2016. And also, I think most of us, we don't even know how the school system work. Who do schools answer to? So there would always be a school inspector. A school inspector looks after about 10 schools in your district. Whether the school comes under MCD or NDMC, or and do you even go there? There is a commissioner sitting there who you can go to. If there's a problem, you can meet the school inspector and tell them that they're not going to include the child. However, your brother is 18. The RTE Act serves only children that like till 14. And for the mainstream schools, they can say no. I mean, I'm afraid. I mean, there are flaws, and we can't do much about it. So at 18, it is difficult for the schools also, and also for you to kind of make them agree to it. But for the children who are younger, I would say first study the system. Spend some time, study the system, who the schools are answerable to. And if you can go and meet the inspectors, school inspectors, and keep them on your side. Show them your struggles. The schools are afraid. As I told, schools are afraid of the people who know their rights. All I'm saying is there are laws, there are provisions, but after a certain age, especially in terms of mainstream schooling, may not work. Thank you.
Okay,
Hello,
thank you.
I have a question.
Well, we are running short of time. Could the questions be put to the end of the
Just
session?
1 second, like, do we have any NCRT books for all this?
Oh, absolutely. NCERT has some great resources. If you just Google provisions for special needs children in NCERT, you'd find a lot of ways to modify the syllabus. And also NCERT, I've told you some CBSE provisions, I told you. NCERT, not provisions, NCERT would give you the ways and means to for inclusion. The provisions are in CBSE. That's what you're asking, right?
Yeah, but do we have some special books for all this?
Special groups.
Books.
Special books for
Children, like what all should be included, so much only should be included in their inclusive...
No, I'm afraid not. You'll have to do that exercise with the teacher. See, every
So
disability is different and every child is different. They cannot have one book that would serve every child in the classroom.
But at least we should think for having such type of books, so that at least some children, like our 50% are benefited. I think that will be...
No, NCERT do have some books. It's not that they don't have. There is a whole department in NCERT that works for our children. So you can visit NCERT and ask. They do have some material, but you would not find it for every concept and everything that's going to be taught. That's what I was thinking. Thank you.
So we are running short of time, so I would advise the other people